and I'd never seen that buck before. Never been on camera, nothing. Pull out my call. This was risky. I wanted to see what would happen. I didn't know if I was going to have a shot at him.
This is where I would have been very nervous. Like, I wouldn't have done this.
Nobody go buy this, by the way. Because I don't want anybody else using it because it works too well.
The deer was directly under you.
And we don't find a drop of blood or anything.
Welcome back to the Ozark podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Veet, and I am joined, as always, by my good buddy and co-host of the show, Mr. Kyle Plunkett. How are you?
Doing good.
You ready to talk some rut and for me to interview you?
Yeah, I'm here in a weird position for the first time. I'm getting interviewed as the co-host.
That's right.
And I'm not interviewing myself.
No, you're not. You can ask yourself questions.
I might.
It just might be, you might sound a little
I might pose a few like that.
senile.
I'll ask a question, then I'll just answer it.
Yeah.
I won't do that. Don't worry.
Well, this will be a fun one for me because, you know, we've been hunting together for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I feel like in a lot of ways when it comes to deer hunting, I didn't grow up deer hunting. It wasn't until I really got into college and started deer hunting with you that I started to get more serious about it. And it really wasn't until we started doing the podcast that I really started to get serious about deer hunting. So for me, it's really only been like 2-3 years since I've been in the woods, you know, just constantly trying to figure out what's going on and just get better. Before that, it was like I'd go, you know, when the Razorbacks weren't playing a big game.
Right. Something more casual.
Just more casual. And but I know you've been doing it for a long time. And so I've gotten to learn from you a lot of like what we're doing. And then obviously doing the podcast, it's helped accelerate my learning curve.
For sure.
But you've been super successful the last couple of years in hunting the rut and just not just, you know, taking a buck, is like taking a decent buck, like a very mature, solid Ozark Mountain bucks that like last year, a 160 class buck that most people might never even see.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I grew up knowing I was hunting bucks. Never thought in Arkansas I was going to hunt big bucks. And also never thought that hunting an Ozark mountain buck was anything special.
Yeah.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
That's all I hunted. That's all I understood. That's all my granddad and dad talked about. It really wasn't until the show. It wasn't until we started interviewing people and hearing all the tactics specific to our region, to the Ozarks, that I realized that the game that we're playing for big bucks out here is different than you're going to find maybe in the Midwest or find in a plains state somewhere or even up north. It's just a different game. And so I've been hunting whitetail since I was about 8 years old. Not successfully since I was 8,
but just doing
it. And so I'm excited. It's going to be weird to share mostly my own stuff rather than hearing with somebody and mostly agreeing or sometimes disagreeing with their stuff. So this will be fun.
Yeah, you'll get to answer all the questions that we normally ask other people, and you're like, I don't do it that way. Or actually, I agree with that a lot. Or I never thought about that. So yeah. And then along the way, of course, you know, as we get later in and kind of get through some of the tactics and stuff that you do and that you pay attention to, we'll get into what tactics we're going to apply.
I love that
this season,
and have been applying,
and what's been going on, which is stuff that, you know, I'll jump into and we can just share stories and whatnot throughout this whole thing. So, let's just start with the first question, which is when we talk about the rut and when we talk about, you know, being in the woods this time of year, what are the things that you are looking to observe or can expect to observe when you're seeing deer doing what they're doing in the woods this time of year?
So hunting the rut is really all I know. I've gotten into the archery game. I've killed, the earliest I've ever killed a deer, a nice deer, was October 13th. And it was a 140 class, like 11 point with a bow. And, but before that, all I've ever known about deer hunting is the rut. So when you even ask that question, it's kind of hard for me to parse out what I'm hoping to expect.
Yeah.
Because in my head, it's the difference of it's either hot in the stand and you're hunting over food, or it's not and it feels like deer hunting. Because growing up, that's all I would do is rifle season, you know, youth hunt rifle into modern gun, where the bucks are chasing, the does are aggravated, they could be in heat, they could be getting fought over, being tended to. The bucks are on their feet. It's cool, it's cold. There's maybe a consistent wind. You know where the good food sources are, you know where the acorns are, but you're probably not just going to sit right in the middle of them. You're looking for good funnels or good transitions or even good rub and scrape lines or where, like known deer activity places.
Yeah.
What you can expect, to answer your question directly, is hopefully, if you're timing it right, deer moving like a lot, not just eating and browsing and feeding and kind of hanging out. You can expect to sit for a while and maybe not see a thing, and then all of a sudden a doe tears out, 80 yards away, and then a buck's on her tail. And I grew up with my dad telling me, especially when I first started doing it, never shoot the first doe that comes out, especially if she's moving and she's looking behind her and all of that. And this was to, 8-10-year-old kid who is trigger happy, wants to get anything on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm asking him, why? Why would you not do that? And he said, well, you never know. There could be a big buck on her tail. And I've killed more bucks that are just on the tail of a doe and kind of peak rut, really the month of November, than I've done doing anything else.
Yeah. So for you, not really growing up rifle hunting and not really getting into bow hunting until the last several years.
Yeah, last 4, 5.
Kind of together as we've done that together. You're just like, man, the rut is just like, it's just hunting season.
Exactly.
It's when Modern Gun opens up and we're out there seeing deer.
Yeah, it's deer season.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah.
Like I know deer season in Arkansas is super long, but in my head, when people say deer season, I think November 1.
Yeah.
And then after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's like that's my season in my head.
Yeah.
Is the 1st of November, and then after the last hunt, Thanksgiving morning, is kind of the sweet time.
Yeah.
It's the time to be in the woods.
Gotcha. And you mentioned, and I've observed this over the last couple of years too, is people talk about the rut and it makes it sound just like an absolute frenzy in the woods where you're just seeing deer all the time. They're moving all over the place. But you mentioned that there can be times when it's not that, like there is movement, but you can be sitting there and not be seeing anything. And there's going to be those kind of dead spells in between action. What keeps you going in those dead spells when it's kind of slowed down and they're still moving, but you're not seeing anything right now?
Well, to answer that, let's just think about the rut phases a little bit. I know, man, there's been so many podcast episodes and media produced on the perfect prediction of the phase of the rut and all of that stuff. I mean, I can remember growing up checking the moon calendar in the hunting cabin based on the temperature and the moon and whatever they're doing, trying to predict. There's like a time in the day, it's 10 o'clock maybe, where the deer are going to be moving. And some of that might be true. But what I really think is happening is you're just hitting phases, and then as a hunter, you're trying to make sense of it. So really the November, end of October, November to November 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, that's just the chasing. Things are just starting to happen. They're kind of finally happening. The rut, as we're defining it, is finally really happening, where there's a couple does in heat, the bucks are on their feet, they're revved up, they're ready to go. They're probably pretty well fed. It's probably just starting to get a little bit cooler, and they're feeling some type of way, right? And they're just moving around. That's why a lot of bow hunters love Halloween hunts that weekend right after Halloween, maybe a couple days right before, through that next full week and weekend before Modern Gun in Arkansas opens. After those, let's call them 10 days, somewhere like that, the chasing maybe isn't as crazy. Maybe more does are being tended to. I don't know exactly what's happening. It's it just I don't know. It seems a little slower. Like bucks maybe they're cruising, but they're not just kind of going nuts. So it seems like rifle opener. You can catch cruising bucks for sure. They're checking scrapes. They're on tops of ridges, looking down. They're working the wind. They're doing all the stuff they should be because they've probably found a girlfriend and they're moving on. Or the older, more mature bucks are thinking it's time to go now.
Yeah.
When it gets slow, traditionally for me, at least what I've experienced, is after that second week of Modern Gun, so now you're looking like true mid-November to that week kind of before Thanksgiving, a lot of the big bucks have girlfriends and they're just hanging out with them. They've got the one they want and they're going to be with her as long as they can.
Yeah.
And then man, something around Thanksgiving, there's a magical Thanksgiving time. I don't know what it is, but something about Thanksgiving or those dates when it traditionally falls. I know Thanksgiving is just what is it, every fourth Thursday? It's the fourth Thursday of November, that kind of thing.
I actually
You need
don't
to check me on that.
Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Yeah, so it's not like
fourth
Christmas where it's
Thursday.
just the 25th of December. It's the fourth Thursday of the month of November. Around that time, I've seen and killed and have had family members and buddies kill more big bucks that time than just about any time.
Really?
And it could be one of two things. Either the bucks are doing something different, or they're finally off for some Thanksgiving holiday and they sit in the woods all day.
Yeah.
And they're
just
moving.
out there.
They're just out there.
Yeah.
And big bucks are hitting the ground. But when it's slow, what's accounting for that middle of the month time? I think it's bucks are really happy that they found some girls and they're just staying tight. That's when they're aggressive. They're doing their thing and they're just kind of there. They're just tending their does. Yeah. So you can bump them up. You can still hunt them. You can find them. But the bucks cruising across ridges all day long thing is kind of settled down by then. And that's when it's slow.
Yeah.
You got to stick with it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's when it's fun.
I want to ask you this before we get too further in. Take me back last year to when you killed that just monster buck. That was opening day of rifle season, right? When you were headed to the woods that day, what were you thinking as far as like, man, this is what I'm looking for. This is where I'm going to set up. This is kind of the spot that I want to be, that puts you in that position to be in that place for a monster 160 class deer to walk out in front of you.
Yeah. Well, do you remember that I called you that morning?
Vaguely.
So
I know we were both up, headed to the woods at two different spots.
I called you early because we were both up.
Yeah.
And I remember saying the fact that I don't have a bow in my hand makes me feel like anything is possible.
Yeah.
So something about bow hunting into rifle hunting, you learn a lot of deer hunting with a bow. Then you pick up a gun and you feel like you can do anything. Yeah. It's kind of a weird headspace, honestly.
Shoot so far.
And I think armed with that, my thought was I want to be in a spot where I can potentially see for far away, like far distance, or I know is a pretty high traffic area. But I remember being pretty confident, like something's gonna happen. It just feels right. It's cold, opening rifle. It's gonna be great. My mindset past that was honestly not that intelligent. It is, I know this spot on this one mountain where the two mountains kind of converge and create a ditch. And along that ditch that's really rocky and really brushy, there's a natural edge that I've seen deer come out of the field, walk up the mountain along that edge to then scan all of the open hardwoods at the top of it more times than I can count. It's a spot that I've grown up hunting. I've known how to hunt it. I have years of history on it. I mean, I probably hunt that one area, not in the same tree, but that one area 7 or 8 times in a deer season.
Yeah.
And I've been hunting that spot by myself probably 15 or 16 years.
Yeah.
So I just know what the deer do. I just know how they move.
You're familiar with that.
Yeah, which is the beauty of like a private farm.
Yeah.
Right. But that buck came from the field up the mountain, crashing along like a freight train, making all the noise in the world. Presumably just to make his dominance known, let people know that he's there.
Yeah.
And he was just on the march for some does. And I'd never seen that buck before. Never been on camera, nothing. He just rolled in. So I'm sure he was living somewhere else, eating somewhere else, sleeping somewhere else, off our property. It's not a big property. He's somewhere all the time.
Right.
But the fact that does were in heat and he was ready to find them led him to that spot. And in my mind, I knew it's a high traffic doe spot. I know that they move through there all the time. They use it. I know how they use it. So it was kind of my only thought was, I'm going to go to where the does normally are.
Right.
And hope that a buck comes along to check him out.
Yeah.
And he did. And he marched up the mountain and I don't know, offered like a 40-yard shot.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
That kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Drew last week was, hunting those high traffic area doe spots where it is a funnel. They're there for a reason. Something's keeping them there, whether it's food on the ground or a transition zone or something like that. And you having that familiarity to know that was going to be happening and just set up in that spot. And also too, you mentioned you hunt there 7-8 times a year, do it for 15, 16 years. Eventually you're probably going to kill a big deer sitting in the same
Luck
tree.
is on your side.
Yeah. It just takes that time.
I killed that archery deer on October 13th out of the same tree.
Yeah.
So I already liked the spot.
Yeah.
I already killed a nice deer. And it's like, I'm going to go back there. Now that I got a gun, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same year, but I like that spot.
No, yeah, you definitely got some history there for sure. I'm gonna jump back to some tactics here, and really just honing in on what you like to do during the rut, because everyone's got their own routine, their own bag of tools and tricks that they like to go to.
Mm-hmm.
For you, I'm gonna kind of just go through a list and break down what you do maybe a little bit differently during the rut. Now that you do bow hunt and you hunt early season too, and you're now hunting the rut, when it comes to calls and, whether that's grunt calls or rattling or, just thrashing up a tree or something like that, doe bleats, whatever, what do you try to do that maybe is a little bit different during the rut, or you feel like you can kind of get away with that you don't get to do other times this season?
So specific to calling?
Yeah.
Or spot and location too?
I'm just going to go calling.
Just calling?
Yeah, let's start with calling.
Okay. Man, unless it is Halloween or the weekend after Halloween and on, I don't bring rattling antlers into the woods, and I don't bring a doe bleat into the woods. I'll do a buck call, like a buck grunt.
Yeah.
But that's it. I learned that lesson the hard way, learning to bow hunt, and it's like the first cold day in October, but it's October 7. I'm out there just crashing antlers.
Yeah.
I'm just terrifying. I'm scaring off every deer. It's in the woods.
They're like, what is
and I
going
watch it
on?
happen. Like, big buck cruising at 80 yards. Like, oh, I'm going to pull him in. And I try doe bleat, and he doesn't care.
Mm.
So I try to grunt at him. He doesn't care. So I pull out the rattling horns, and it's just go, 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 go. And he books it. He's like getting out of there.
Yeah.
Now, could that be that one buck wasn't dominant? He's scared of it. I don't know. It's probably he's just not expecting it. What I should have done is little bit of time. They touch a little bit, makes a little bit of noise. It's like kind of some sparring.
Yeah.
I was doing full on rut.
Yeah.
Big mean buck versus big mean buck. I want the other big mean buck to come check him out. I think he just took off.
Yeah.
So I don't mess with that until really the chasing phase, the kind of the high intensity time that we just identified, that Halloween-ish, kind of into early, right before rifle. When that happens, I love the doe bleat. I love the doe can. I love a grunt call that can transition to a doe bleat. I like blind calling, and I like blind rattling. I haven't had a ton of success rattling in big bucks that aren't already chasing something around with rattles, but I feel like I rattle in little bucks quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so I say that there's been a few times I've rattled in big bucks, but I can't get them close enough to bow range. So that, they can tell when they get to that area. And that's why I mentioned spots a little bit. Bow hunting, you're hunting such a tight area. You want the terrain to work for you and how they move to work for you and all of that you do tend to hose yourself if you don't have some cover behind you that's really thick, that maybe the buck thinks they're fighting behind that cover. Or if you're not hunting with a decoy or something like that, they can get to where they can see you at 80 yards out, and they know where that sound came from.
Yeah.
And they're looking around going, well, there's nothing happening here, so I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And with a gun, that's a different story, because you can rattle in a buck out to 100-something yards. And as long as he's coming to check it out, like once you see him, it's game on. You don't have to get him any closer. And so I like to rattle those first couple weekends of rifle opener.
Yeah.
I also just think it's fun. I think it's fun to rattle antlers, and love blind calling with the grunt, and the doe bleat works too. I actually pulled in a buck with the doe bleat.
I remember you saying that. I think you said that when you were talking about. Was that when you were on Bear Grease?
Oh yeah, I guess I've done 2 now. Yeah. That big one that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Because he was coming up the hill and was below me.
Did you tell that story on there?
Yeah, I did.
That wasn't the Misty Langdon episode, though, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Was it really?
That's the only one I've been on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because Clay, he told us before started, like, hey, I have to talk about this butt grunt. He's like, it's part of it's part of the deal.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of making fun of just the industry. I got to do this. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, it's got your name on it. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, do you want some free marketing? And he made a joke. He's like, do you want me to give it to you? I was like, no, it's free.
Yeah.
So I told the story after he grunted it and was talking about it. And yeah, I turned that deer.
And so sure enough, you were using that call.
Yeah, Clay's call.
When you bleated. You didn't butt grunt.
Well, I meant to grunt.
You had it backwards?
Yeah, so that call that he makes, it's called the acorn. Nobody go buy this, by the way, because I don't want anybody else using it because it works too well. And I'm just going to play more.
Okay, well, now everyone's going to go buy it.
It's actually, dude, it's such a good call. So I'm using his acorn, which is not his Acorn Pro, which is what he was advertising. It's the one that's made out of wood, not plastic. And if you blow one way, it grunts, and if you flip it and go the other way, it bleats.
Yeah.
But that also means they designed it where you can inhale if it's cold and you don't want your, I don't know, your breath fogging up or whatever. You can essentially breathe in and out and go grunt, bleat, grunt, bleat, grunt, bleat if you wanted to. And so I picked it up when I heard that thing, wanting to get just a good, like, see what if he'd come up.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a toe bleed. And it worked, bro.
Oh, my goodness.
Turned.
When you told that story the first time, you did not tell me that detail. It was, I bleeded that sucker in. I knew exactly what I was doing.
No. Well, maybe. When you tell the story immediately after the hunt, it's I knew what I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
But when you remember the true story, it was I meant to grunt.
I was trying to grunt.
But it still, I called and it worked. So in my head, I knew exactly what I was doing.
That's how I tell the story too.
It totally worked.
This happened to me twice, which as a deer hunter drives me crazy because I've done this same mistake twice now and now not do it again. Although it trips me up because you did this and it worked for you just recently. And that same mistake was I grunted at a deer, at a buck, when it was too close. And it looked around, it didn't see a buck, and it took off.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened on your grandpa's property. I was up on the side of the hill, that same property that you killed that 160 on. And I was just not, really mature, probably a 4.5-year-old 8-point was walking by, and he was up the hill behind me, probably 50, 60 yards. I'm bow hunting at this point. So I'm trying to get him to come a little bit closer, and he's just cruising by. He's on a straight line. Doesn't look like he's going to come my way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I start grunting to him, and he stops. He looks, and he starts to come my way, but then he just keeps going on that same path. And so I grunt again. He looks, and he's looking like kind of frantically, like he's looking for what just made that noise. He can't find any bolts, like scared bolts. And so that was the first time I was like, man, I don't know. I didn't feel like I was that close. But then when I got down from the tree after that morning hunt, I looked to where he was standing, and there's nothing in between us. There was no brush. So he had a clear sight line into where that noise was coming from, and he didn't see a thing. And he hated it. He ran away. I did the same thing the next year with it was just a doe that I was just going to take for, meat in the freezer. And I called to a doe that, was behind some brush. I was just trying to get a little bit closer. Again, bow hunting, you're trying to get within like that 25, 30 yards. And I made a call to a doe that was, in my mind, too close, and it spooked and it ran off. And so I'm like, man, I'm so nervous about calling when they get real close like that, especially if there's a clear sight line between where I'm at and where they're at.
Yep.
But your story that you've got from this last one that you shot last week, that heavy 9-point that you have not told the story yet, blows my mind because you actually you called with one right under you.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell that story, but before I do, one more thing on calling. This is just for anybody learning how to deer hunt. They want to learn how to call, and they want to figure it out. You have to know the tools that you're working with when it comes to calling. So with a bow, it's a very different game than with a rifle. Mm-hmm. With a rifle, this is why I asked if you wanted to talk location too, and I'll do it for 2 seconds. Rifle season in the rut, I hunt very differently than I do with a bow. I'm just thinking differently. So my locations are different. I love to sit at like the top of a bowl. Or sit maybe not where you're skylighted, but you're even on the top of the ridge looking down, and you can make those 125-yard shots if you had to. And calling to that, like if you grunt or rattle or doe bleat in deer that you can't see and you can get them even to 80, and they still like there's still a lot of gap between you and them, and there's brush or there's cover, there's whatever, they're not gonna just book out of there. They're curious, it's in the rut, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And there's a pretty good chance that once you see that deer, your shot opportunities are there. At least if you're not frantically scrambling, right? Like you're probably gonna have a good shot at them. And so you can set up on halfway down a ridge or a little, top of the ridge, not the very top, but a little bit under, and look down. You can sit over big open fields and know, like, I can shoot to their side. You can get to where it's not as thick and not as immediate, where the calling is maybe, it works to pull them in, but it's not as, the consequences or the stake is maybe not as high because you just have further reach. What you're running into, especially in some of these spots that I know you and I hunt together, is with a bow. If you're trying to get one that is 80 out into 20, but they can see everything between you and them,
right?
And there's no place other deer could be.
Yeah,
they're automatically gonna be like, "What the heck is doing that?" And they're gonna get out of there.
Yeah,
which is why this story worked. You gotta know where you're hunting and know what you're hunting with for the calls to work. Okay. So I was hunting in a thick covered bottom bowl. With ridges that connect where I know they run, and those deer can't see very far.
Except for the fact that the deer was directly under you.
Okay, you're right. That's the other part.
The doe,
yes,
not the buck that you were hunting.
That's the other part. This one was just lucky.
Yeah,
this one just worked.
You told me the story. I was like, this doesn't even make sense to me in my head. But
well, here's what happened. I think the only reason I didn't get busted is this doe was so aggravated that she was getting chased. That's all that was on her mind. Was I'm getting chased by this buck.
Yeah, she's probably exhausted.
Yeah,
worn out.
What's going on? Young doe, so not much experience with this.
Yeah.
I think she didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
and I think this buck was too in his head about what he wanted to do that he wasn't thinking about what was going on either.
Yeah.
So weekend after Halloween, November, what would that be? Is that the 4th?
4th was Saturday.
Yeah.
No, wait, no, sorry. No, it was the 2nd.
2nd. So November 2nd. With a bow on some property where I've had a lot of decent deer, a couple like tall tined but no mass, 8 points, one with a cool kicker, but then one buck of all of the bucks that I was like, if I see that buck with a bow, it's going to happen. It's just a heavy, heavy, heavy frame 9-point. And he's pretty deer, big, heavy set of horns. And truly was thinking on this property, because it's smaller, it's less than 50 acres.
Yeah.
This is the one deer that if I see him, I want him. The other ones I'm going to let keep growing, but this is the one. And I'm sitting in my tree, get in there early. Sunrise comes up, no movement, no squirrels, no nothing. A little bit chilly, but not cold. Not much wind, but the wind is in my face, so I have that in my favor. And I'm sitting in not a great spot for the morning. I'm sitting low. So I'm low at the bottom of where 3 different small hills, not really even mountains, converge to a creek bottom. And I'm sitting on a tree that's maybe 6 feet up the ridge off that creek bottom. And I'm high though. I took those wild edge steps, not the sticks, because I gave the sticks back to my brother because he let me borrow those.
That's right.
Hunting. And I used all of them. It was like, I'm getting up.
I'm getting as high as
getting
I
up
can.
here.
Yeah.
And for like 2 hours, nothing happens. And then, like it does, it can just turn on this time of year. All of a sudden, I start hearing grunting to my strong side, so my left side, but like my 9 o'clock. So way up on the hill, there's a field, and then there's a bunch of hardwoods, and then it's really thick. Then there's a road, and then it kind of comes down this bottom. And I see deer using that ridge a lot. And I could hear grunting from that stuff. And all of a sudden, 2 does come tearing out of this place. And one goes across the road, over the ridge, and then is at my direct 9 o'clock, like 25 yards. The other one goes straight, so she didn't come any closer. She goes straight across the ridge. Well, when they do that, they stop and they're looking behind them. More grunts. So it's like burp, 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 burp. You just hear it. So at this point, I have my bow.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, there's a buck coming. We're gonna see what happens. This heavy 9 comes out of the woods. I'm I'm in my head immediately going, that's the one. That's the one I've been watching.
Yeah.
See him on camera. I like this one. He's pretty. I know he's an older, mature deer. This is gonna happen, maybe. But he's far off and it's thick. He keeps grunting, head down, totally chasing, unaware of anything in the surroundings other than there's two does out in front of him. Well, as he comes across the road that's kind of a little clearing, I range him at about 45 yards and start thinking, I don't want to make a shot at 45. But I could if he gives me like a perfect broadside standing shot. But he's not. He's running around.
Yeah.
Though it's higher on the ridge, he starts going after her. So he comes to my 9 o'clock after her. And as he does that, he pushes this other doe that's a little bit lower already, lower to directly under my stand.
Mm-hmm.
She is under my platform that I'm standing on with the saddle. And now these deer are, your perfect shot in a saddle is, what would you say, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock? If the tree is 12,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Off to your left side.
Off to your left side if you're a right-handed bow shooter. So she is right under my saddle. Buck is chasing that doe that's now 45 yards out, but through the thick stuff directly at my 9 o'clock. And she goes further. He stops. He's looking around. Well, this doe is under me. And so I pull out my call. This was risky. I don't recommend this to many people. I wanted to see what would happen. I didn't know if I was going to have a shot at him.
This is where I would have been very nervous. Like, I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, I don't know why I did. Honestly,
just because
I was just in the zone though. I was like, this is happening.
Yeah.
This is sweet.
Yeah.
So I doe bleed. So I make a long, come get me.
Yeah.
So he turns and he looks at her, and she's right there. And
she stays put.
And
that's the key.
Yeah, she didn't move.
Yeah.
She's directly under me. She's right there. So he starts kind of aggressively marching in, and then he hangs up at another thicket before he gets to her. And now at this point, I'm thinking I have no good shot. He's kind of stuck in between me and now two different doe. But I know all around me is some thick country. And so when I bleated at him, I turned my call to him. So it'd be loud. I mean, real loud.
Yeah.
Come get me. Well, then I turned the grunt in my mouth, and I'm holding the bow with one hand, and I have the release already on the D loop, so I'm kind of holding it up like this.
Mm.
I'm also just holding the call. And so in the call, then I give an aggressive grunt. So like and then do it one more time. And then this is where I've never tried it, and I don't know why I did it. Probably the grunt would have worked. I'd then let go of the call. I kind of slide it into my shirt collar, and with my mouth give a snort wheeze.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to do into the mic because it's going to blow out somebody's headphones. But give a snort wheeze with my mouth. And when I do that, I'm directing the sound the other way. So it sounds like it's maybe, I don't know. But it's in my head, it's going to sound like it's over there.
Right.
If the one sound was directed at him, this one's coming from that direction. Or at least sounds like it's further away. And so then he comes in at a dead march of I'm after whoever's now after my girl.
That's
kind of deal. And doe is still beneath me. She doesn't move. Like, didn't look at me. She didn't do anything, bro.
Yeah.
She's standing there. He comes in from 45 through the thick stuff, stops on this pretty steep ridge. Now I'm up high, and now he's up high, but he's at 11 and a half yards. And our line of sight, rather than what you'd think at being 22, 25 yards up and him being 11 yards is a really crazy steep angle, was actually quite a bit more level than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
And so there was an angle. I was shooting down, but it was not a 25-yard angle on an 11-yard shot. It was a little bit more parallel.
Because the elevation.
Because he was up higher. And he came out into the clearing and was looking at her and was fully frontal and was not going to turn.
Yeah.
Because I'd convinced him to come in to her under the stand. And at this point, I'm drawn back. And my sight picture is nothing but the front of this buck. And I'm holding it, I'm thinking, am I really going to do this? Like, I've never shot a deer frontal before. This is kind of risky.
Yeah.
Well, then he I don't know if he was scenting or like, you know how they'll lick their nose
Yeah.
if they're trying to catch like, is she really in heat or whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
He does that and he starts raising his head up. So then I feel really good about my shot. His head's up and kind of in the air.
Yeah.
He's exposing his neck. I can aim for at least that middle chest hair stuff, whatever. We'll see.
And of course, you're thinking like, where's my arrow going through and coming out?
Yeah, I knew it was going to go through and down.
Yeah.
But better angle, like I said.
Right.
And so I put it just a little bit higher on the neck than you would think you'd want to. If you're on the ground, you put it right in the middle. I put it higher up in the neck and let it go. And I watched him run down below me, around behind me, maybe 10 complete bounds up the hill before one crash.
Mm-hmm.
No kicking, no nothing. Like he was running dead. And he crashed and was done. Watched him in binoculars, saw where he was. And then I'm just fired up because he's right there and I can see him. And then I hear another grunt. There's another buck on these does' tails. And he was up way, way high. So I start grunting at him thinking I can pull in too. I can tag out on, archery bucks. And he ends, I don't know if he catches wind of the blood or
the distress deer or something.
Or maybe because 10 seconds before I was just going, yeah, like, that was awesome.
He's like, whoa.
And I immediately called my brother. So my phone was going off. Yeah. I was not hunting at that point. I was celebrating, but he didn't answer. But I had it on speaker, just like ringing.
Like, hey.
So I'm sure that other buck was kind of going, there's something up here. So he takes off. But I get down, go find it. That arrow was perfect. I took the heart and it was like dead center. Arrow went in where you'd think a little bit higher in the neck and then out like middle of the middle on his stomach. So went through everything. Yeah. Like just perfect.
Yeah.
And watched him crash. And so that was fun for a lot of reasons. It was a nice buck, closest shot I've ever made.
Yeah.
He came in, there was a lot of drama, which was fun. And the grunting and the kind of the back and forth play made it really, really fun. It wasn't just waiting to see what happened. It was, he's going to go off with this other doe. I'm going to make him come to me.
Yeah.
And I could totally screw it up. But the other thing in my head was he's just going to leave.
Yeah.
Like, why not go for it?
Yeah.
A little bit. So
it's a crazy story for me for a couple reasons. One, that I think the first one is that doe under you didn't spook off when you were calling directly above her.
I can't figure that out.
That's crazy. But like you said, she's probably exhausted. She's probably just like confused what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is the fact that you snort wheezed and you had never done that before to a deer.
Well, I've done it in practice.
But like never in a live situation, right? And you were just like, I don't know, this feels right.
It just felt right.
I'm just doing it. And then the third thing is just the fact that he came in on a rope like that, and then you made that shot that was so amazing. Like
it was fun.
What a hunt, dude! I can't believe it. It's and it was the target buck that you're going for in that property.
That was the first time I've done that.
Yeah,
I've traditionally not been a trail cam guy. I know we've talked about that. I've loved these Moultries.
Yeah,
they've been fun.
Yeah,
just to figure. I mean, I've never had a cell cam.
Right.
I've done game cams, but those are a pain. Where it's pull the cards, and I'm just bad at it. I don't have time for it. I like it for bears, so I've never had them come to my phone before. I know you're ate up on it because you think it's fun. Just seeing what deer come in and it texts to your phone.
Yeah,
it's honestly a blast.
It is fun, and I could see how you could like get too reliant on it, too dependent on it. And I've heard and talked to some guys who they've had to scale back their cell cam game. But I think like knowing that going into it, they're an incredible tool, and you can use them and not have to go in and put your scent on the ground. I think that can give you a huge, huge advantage.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen him daylight in a little while.
Yeah,
but I just knew he was around.
Yeah,
and so that's why I ultimately picked that spot. Like he had daylighted. Well, I didn't have him on camera for a while, but the last time I had him was on that camera's spot.
Yeah, and
it was maybe a week before.
Yeah,
and so in my mind, it's like there's a chance he comes back. It'd be cool.
Absolutely.
So that's why I did it.
That's awesome, man. What a great story. And that was kind of a little bit of a tangent there, but we were talking on calling, and you just actually, you did several different calls in that.
Yeah, everything but rattle.
Pretty much everything but rattle. Man, that's so cool. I was going to ask you this. When it comes to scent and wind direction. For you, does your approach change at all during the rut? Kind of going back to like, let's break down some of these tactics and things that you like to focus on. Do you change up your style at all when it comes to scent and wind and thermals as it relates to the rut versus hunting early season or late season?
So I never knew about thermals growing up. That's been a more recent thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in the last couple of years, I've considered thermals and wind direction more than I ever have before.
Yeah.
Growing up, it was spray the scent away spray on your clothes.
Yeah.
And walk in kind of wet.
Yeah.
And then sit in the pre-established tree stand and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it worked like a surprising amount, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're hunting with your dad or whatever. But I feel like now the approach probably hasn't changed. If anything, I just feel more confident in picking a spot, thinking if the wind direction is generally pretty good, say it's going to blow into a ravine or into a creek or into the spot where I don't think the deer are going to come from, or I've not traditionally seen them come from, then I feel pretty good to hunt that spot.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of these guys who has to have every stand perfectly fit to whatever wind direction traditionally comes through and all of that. Mostly because in the mountains, the wind swirls. And so my tactic the last 4 or 5 years has just been get up really high, especially with a rifle. Better vision, you can see further, shoot further. And the chance of the thermals, especially in the morning, I love hunting the morning. I actually like hunting the morning almost 100% more than I like hunting the evening.
Really? Why is that?
I've killed way more deer in the morning than I have in the evening. All of my big bucks, but 2, yeah, I've killed in the morning. And the reason I like the morning is traditionally a little less windy until about 9 o'clock, and so you can just go to the spot you want to go where there's high deer traffic. And then you can climb up high in the stand and have a better shot with the rifle. And then as the thermals rise, if the wind is kind of low and the thermals are rising, it's a pretty good bet your scent's just going up. It's just going off into the trees, right? And it's not getting placed all over the ground. The evening, it kind of flips. As it gets cooler, your thermals are dropping onto everything. And the wind, especially in late October, November around here, tends to just pick up at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning and stay until right before dark.
Yeah.
And so the wind's just against you a little bit more. So I just like the morning. And I don't know. I don't know if I've ever thought about that fully or even articulated it. But for the wind and thermals or scent specifically, yeah, the morning just tends to work. I think because I can get high and then scent can go high, and it's great.
Yeah.
And I like waking up with the woods more than I like putting the woods to bed.
Yeah.
I love walking in the dark. I hate walking out in the dark.
We've talked about that before.
I hate walking out in the dark.
Yeah, it's a little bit different knowing that the entire night is ahead of you.
Yeah.
Versus like I'm gonna be in daytime soon.
Yep. And if you kill a buck in the morning, you have all day to find it and process it, and that's fun. If you kill one in the evening, sometimes it's kind of a downer, especially if it's like a Saturday night and you've got church the next morning. It's like, well, guess I gotta go home. Throw this thing in the truck and figure it out the next day.
Processor, maybe.
Yeah, I like doing it myself. But no, scent's a good question. I've tried everything. I feel like recently I have the scent-free deodorant, and then the scent-free laundry detergent, and scent-free shampoo. But that's about it. Yeah. I don't do any cover stuff. I don't really worry about it. Like I'll wear my hunting clothes to get gas. I know some guys would like kill you for saying that. Don't you dare.
It is funny.
Like, I don't know. I just don't worry about it that much.
Some people are such sticklers for it. And to their credit, those guys kill big deer.
They do.
But then it's like, well, so do other people. It's not just the scent fanatic. So it I think you do the best you can. Because I'm the same way as you. It's like you do the best you can and you understand the wind, the thermals. You play that to the best ability that you can, and then you hope for the best. Because nothing's guaranteed.
I also don't hunt very well if I feel like I've already made a bunch of mistakes before I even get out to the stand. And something about the thought of you can make a mistake just by driving your truck to the woods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could eat a snack on the way and that could mess everything up.
Yeah.
For some reason, for my mindset, does not help me hunt deer.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather feel like whatever I'm doing, I'm confident in doing, and I can just roll out there and get it done.
Yeah.
I don't know, it like helps me hunt in a weird way.
Yeah.
Just the thought of I can just throw on my gear and go and take off, and it's not like it could matter, but it's really not going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
Helps me hunt better. I don't know why that is.
You don't feel like you have to be so precise in everything that you do to where you're
careful.
You're creating like an anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you're heading into your hunt with a bunch of anxiety of like, did I do that right?
Yeah.
Did I open that Twinkie? Did some of the crumbs get on me? And now they smell the
Did I
Twinkie.
clink the sticks on the way up and now is every deer busted out? It's like probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would rather hunt a little bit more aggressively, but also a little bit more confidently.
Yeah.
Just, man, I'm out here and it's going to work and I'm going to figure it out. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking, I can't believe I drank a Gatorade and spilled a little bit on me on the way out, and that's going to bust out the deer because of the scent, I just don't like doing it.
That makes sense. I would, knowing you and knowing how you hunt, I would agree with your assessment of that. It's like you just like to go in confident and and even when it's days like, man, I don't know, it's 90 degrees, it doesn't feel like deer hunting. We're out there early season and we haven't seen a lot of action on this spot, but it's like we've got time, we're going to hunt. You're like, we're gonna kill a deer today. Like you just have to, you love the confidence going into it.
Yeah, you gotta have it.
And I appreciate it because it's like, do you feel like you're trying to like you can manifest it a little bit?
No, I feel like I've hunted deer since childhood, and there's certain days that you just wake up and can just tell.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's gonna happen today.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a feeling. So I don't know.
I get that.
Maybe manifest is the right word. Maybe it is just a confidence thing. Maybe it's just I have more fun if I'm confident that it's gonna happen. You can't kill many deer in the woods if you think every move you're making could be the wrong move.
Right.
Then you're not gonna make any moves.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would never actually go find sign. You'd never actually move a spot if it's hotter over there.
Mm-hmm.
You should go over there. You'd never actually call. Or you'd never actually stay the extra 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd much rather think it's going to happen every time I'm out there.
No, that makes sense. I totally get what you're saying there. What's like one of your most memorable hunts from, hunting the rut or hunting November timeframe that is just like where everything came together, emotions were high, low, you learned some mistakes. What's the story that you remember kind of thinking back on your time deer hunting?
So one of the stories that immediately comes to mind is back when I would hunt with my dad. My dad and granddad taught me everything I know about deer hunting, but I feel like I spent more time in the deer stand with my dad. Normally because my little brother would go with my granddad. That's just kind of how it would happen. Mm. And I know we've said it a couple of times. The rut, this time frame we're talking about, even though you're listening to this kind of later November, just be in the woods. Like that's the key. You're going to figure out how deer are moving. They're going to be chasing each other around. That's like how you kill deer because they're moving. I was with my dad, and the morning hunt, we were in this oak grove, and the stand was set up for, like a 2-man permanent deer stand kind of deal. We'd built it out of plywood and big open area. So with a rifle, you can shoot for a long way, you can see for a long way, and it was right on the edge of this super, super thick cedar thicket. The same place, actually, that if you heard the folklore episode and we talked about the mountain lion that came out after my cousin, is that thicket. That's where it ran out of.
Got it.
And these deer come up from below us, low on the ridge. This buck's trailing this doe, and I'm trying to get turned to make a shot. And at this point, I'm like 12, 13 years old. So right before I started hunting on my own, and I couldn't get the rifle. I couldn't get around to where I could turn around to find the deer and then lay the rifle on the rest to make a confident shot at that age. I was still too small that I couldn't just hold it and shoot. And so this buck is moving quick. I can't get turned around. My dad has his gun. And finally, things are happening so quickly that I was like, Dad, just get it. Just shoot it. And so he stands up to shoot over me because I'm kind of in his way. So he stands up to make sure everything's safe. I kind of duck down. And he takes a shot. Doe takes off. Buck takes off and runs. buck is running. He thinks he might have missed it, so he takes a couple other shots. Semi-automatic gun hits a tree. Bark goes everywhere, blows up. You can see like big white hole, like when you shoot an oak tree and all the bark blows off.
Yeah.
And then we get down to track it hour later or so, and we don't find a drop of blood or anything. All we see is where he shot at the tree, and we had thought he just missed it.
Just clean miss.
Totally missed it. So this is like a day of just mistakes and accidents that led with like interesting endings. We think we totally missed it. Hiking around, we think, let's just go back, make a sandwich, get a drink of water, maybe take a nap, and just figure it out this evening because we've missed this deer.
Yeah.
And as we're walking back, my dad asked me, he's like, do you smell something? Like, yeah, it smells weird. He's like, it smells like a deer.
Yeah.
I was kind of, yeah, Dad, we're in the deer woods. He's like, no, Kyle, it really smells like a deer. And my dad used his nose like a bloodhound to smell his way to that deer. He killed it.
No way.
Yeah, he shot it. It was the buck, and it was like freshly killed, perfect shot. It just ran into some thick stuff.
How far off the trail was that? Like for him to just pick up that scent?
And we were just walking through the woods, kind of back to where we were. I don't know. The wind was just right, and he could smell it, like the ruddy, musty kind of smell.
Yeah,
he could smell it. And so we field dress it, drag it out. It's like a beautiful Ozark Mountain 8-point. And so now my dad is all kind of beat up over the fact that I didn't shoot this deer.
Yeah.
Because he wanted me to. I think he loved deer hunting, but his thing was if I'm hunting with my sons and a nice buck comes out, like they're shooting the deer.
Yeah.
I'm here as backup. I'm here for the fun. And so he was super beat up. He's like, man, I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. I'm like, Dad, it's okay. I've killed a nice deer. He's like, yeah, but this one's bigger.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know it's fine, but I've killed some nice deer and whatever. And so we get in the stand that evening, different spot, and he's still feeling all this stuff. And we're sitting at the edge of a field, and then he pulls up the gun on the rope, and he racks a round for it or in the gun for me, and then hands it to me. And as he's handing me the gun, the safety's off, which was his mistake.
Uh-oh.
And I grab it by the trigger and the base at the same time and shoot a round off.
Oh, no.
Just into the sky. So gun goes off. Now my dad feels scared and bad. I've shot the deer my son was supposed to kill, and I just handed him a loaded gun without the safety. And he pulled off a round. And so then we have the whole conversation of like why that was the wrong move and all the stuff and hunter safety all the things, which my dad was really good about. Like I don't know, I've never known him to make a dumb decision in the woods.
Yeah.
That might be the one that I can actually pin. And he's like, I can't believe I did that. So now we're in this stand, and I know this because later we talked about it. Just like, what are we doing here? We've shot off a gun without meaning to. I thought I missed a deer, but I didn't. We found it almost on accident, and it was a deer that Kyle was supposed to get. This just is not our day. It's like not a lucky day. Well, we're sitting there, and behind us in the woods, same old story. Doe comes up from below. This time she's coming to a field, and my dad goes, Kyle, there's a buck. And so I turn, and it's a 7-point. It's like, I'm going to shoot it. And I have my scope on it. I'm about to pull the trigger, and I kid you not, as I'm about to make the squeeze, he goes, stop. I said, what? He said, there's a much bigger buck. I said, where is it? And he's like, it's right behind the 7-point. And so I picked my head up, pulled the gun back. That doe had come pretty close to the stand and kind of looped around. 7-point was hot on her tail, and then this much bigger 8-point was behind him. Mm-hmm. And he comes up to our right. I'm sitting on the left side of the stand, and my dad's on the right. He comes up to my dad's side, and my dad leans forward in the stand so I can put the gun over his back, so I can use his back as a rest to shoot this buck that had now come to like 20 yards.
Yeah. And
I remember having him in the scope and whispering, Dad, his brow tines are huge. And he goes, that's great. I said, Dad, his G2s are massive. He goes, I hear you. I was like, and look how wide he is. And after I said the third thing, he goes, Kyle, just shoot the dang deer. So
don't aim at the antlers.
I was just checking it out. It all happened so quick. So I shot it, and it just drops right there. So then we're just all kind of fired up,
Oh, yeah.
celebrating all the stuff. And we get down and go find it. And sure enough, huge brow tines, huge G2s, not much mass, like classic kind of big old Ozark buck.
Yeah.
Tall, wide, but thin.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite deer, like a beautiful deer.
Yeah.
And I just loved that. I just loved that weekend. That like killed deer, missed deer, finding deer with our nose. Gun goes off in the stand.
Your dad's got quite the sniffer.
Here comes the bigger buck. After I was about to get another one, he's like, "Wait, don't shoot that one."
So what's your takeaway from that? Like, thinking back on a day like that, what can you kind of take away from that?
If you're in the woods at the right time, you pretty much can't screw it up. No, the takeaway is you can make mistakes that will totally screw up a hunt. Absolutely.
Sure.
But you can also make mistakes in a weird way away from the deer before the deer come, and you're fine. Keep hunting.
Yeah.
The first one wasn't really a mistake. My dad shot a nice deer.
Right.
The second one, the gun going off, whatever, we're thinking in our heads, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's loud. We've messed it all up.
Yeah. This whole area is spooked out now.
Those bucks were chasing those does and they wanted to be there. And so it was no big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, the takeaway is hunt with your dad because it's fun, but also the things that you might think are totally screwing up your hunt. I mean, there's a decent chance that they're not.
Yeah.
Unless you are busting up deer or deer are snorting at you and running and flagging as you're sitting in the stand, like, yeah, you're probably messing something up.
Right.
But for the most part, rifle hunting during the rut, you can make some mistakes. It's more lenient. It's a more lenient time to be in the woods if you're a novice hunter and trying to figure it out. Because those deer are not thinking right.
No.
They just want to be with the girls.
And even to like fire off a round, give it 15, 20 minutes. I mean, how far can a buck go in that amount of time frame when he's hot on the trail and he's coming across a ridge and he's not pinpointed where that rifle came from 20 minutes ago. He's not even thinking about that.
No, and for that property we're on, he's hearing rifle shots all the time.
Left and right.
From the neighbors and across the ridge. And I mean, that's just part of his world.
Yeah. But I can't emphasize gun safety enough.
No, truly. And yeah, I hope my dad doesn't listen to this. And also then say, well, call me later and say, thanks, Kyle, for outing me on the podcast. It has a bunch of people listen to it.
Yeah.
My dad he made me take the hunter safety course earlier than I should have. Told me he wouldn't take me hunting until I passed it. Super, super into gun safety. I mean, all the stuff.
Yeah.
That was just the one mistake. It was funny because we were already in the stand. It was already safe, but I think in trying to be safe, even racked the round for me.
Yeah.
Thinking I'm not going to let him mess this up. And then just ended up handing it to me with the safety off.
Yeah.
And then I stupidly grabbed it by the trigger too.
Yeah.
And it was aimed in a good direction or whatever. Another thing he was doing well, he's handing it. You can't see if you're listening, but here's the gun and it's away and it's whatever.
Like very dramatic.
Yeah, man. It was fun. I loved.
That's a fun story.
Loved hunting with my dad.
That's cool. All right, let's shift gears a little bit and kind of looking ahead. As we're here sitting November 20th, and we've had some time in the rut. At this point, we're recording early November, so things could have changed. But what are some of the things that you're excited to try out? Here in the rut and throughout the rest of November.
I'm excited to hunt with a gun. I even hunted with a bow during gun season for a little bit there when you and I were getting really into it.
Yeah.
And I'm just not doing that again.
You're not doing it again.
No. I don't have an ego that needs any stroking.
Yeah.
That says I have to hunt with a bow.
Yeah.
When it's gun season. I love hunting with a rifle, and I think I'm pretty fine to say it's a great way to hunt.
Yeah.
It's a great tool, and I think it's fun. I love that I can finally go to some spots that I have figured out and kind of pinned down that are honestly terrible bow spots, but are really, really good rut funnel, high deer density, high deer traffic rifle spots.
Yeah.
Where there's a good chance that buck is just chasing that doe along at 85 yards through whatever he's, through that terrain.
Yeah.
That gets me fired up.
Yeah. I get that. And I think back to kind of what you mentioned early on, how you grew up hunting, like that's how you grew up hunting. That's what you think of in
Mhm.
like the nostalgia of this is what deer hunting is.
This is deer camp.
This like that makes total sense. I think for me, this will only be my second year to use a gun during rifle season.
Yeah, because you went heavy bow,
I just went heavy bow, and
which is impressive.
I've killed a few, but it's nothing monster, nothing giant. And there's been days where I wish I had that rifle because a huge deer walked out at 70 yards, and so it's challenged me. But for me, it is a challenge, and it's a man. I just want to be able to say that I did it. Like I stuck it out. I didn't quit just because it was hard, and that will keep me doing it. But I am going to be using a rifle this season, and that's just because like I agree with you. Like I just want to having that ability to get out that much further and just to be that much more effective at a further range. I'm looking forward to that, especially because the spot that I'm really keying in on this year is it's a really good funnel. It's got the right topography features to channel these deer in, but not so tight that they're coming through consistently within 30 yards. There's a couple different trails that they can take. And earlier this year during the velvet buck hunt, I had deer walking on the opposite tree line that was out of bow range as I'm sitting there. And I'm like, man, just I would hate for this to happen during the rut when like a big buck is cruising by quickly and it's the buck that I'm after and I'm sitting in here and I can't get to it. So this specific spot I think has kind of got me, I'm open to my mind a little bit because it's kind of a 50-50 of which trail they're going down sometimes. So
But with a rifle, you got a chance at both trails.
I am fully bought in and sold on this new idea that I've been kind of flirting with the last couple seasons, and I know we've talked about this, but I've just been seeing more and more people talking about this, or more videos, and actually it came up again a couple weeks ago when John Odell, our buddy John, killed those 2 bucks on one night, and it was not just waiting for a big buck to walk by, but like if you get a doe walking by or another buck that's like I would shoot that buck, it may not be the biggest one, go ahead and taking it and dropping it close by because those big bucks see a deer on the ground, they don't know or care that it's dead. They're coming in. I've seen probably within the last week, I've probably seen 3 different videos of someone shooting a doe during the rut, it dropping right there, and a buck will come up and push that doe around on the ground lifeless.
No way.
Just lifeless. And it's, think about like the estrus that's, the urine, whatever's coming out. If it's a younger buck, it sees it as a competition, and those deer are just out of their mind. They're doing crazy stuff. So for me, I'm like, man, I've got tags to fill. I've already shot a deer this year. I've got a doe tag filled. I shot another buck that I lost. I just, I've got some room in the freezer. I'm going to take a doe. The first doe I see that walks by close, I'm going to take it. I'm going to try to drop it right there. And then I'm just going to wait for a buck to come by and use that as like a half live decoy, but not really alive.
That's a crazy tactic.
And so I don't know. I'm just like, I'm going to try it.
How have you been seeing these things and I haven't?
I'm not sending them to you.
Well, yeah, that's like your secret back pocket tactic there.
But you heard John Odell's story.
Yeah, but I don't think I equated it with because that buck was on the ground, that other one was being aggressive towards it.
He said that buck came in and was fighting it on the ground, dead.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you some videos after we get off of this where I'm looking at it like jaw dropped, like, oh man, that I could see how that would work. So it's kind of like a live decoy without it being moving.
Right. It's dead on the ground. I don't know, man. If it works for you, I'll be excited to tell that story.
That's what I'm telling everybody my tactic.
This is what I'm doing.
Some people
kill like the first doe that comes along.
That guy's crazy.
Yeah, maybe so.
Doing? But
I'm not going to kill the first doe that comes along.
You're not. You're going to wait.
I'm going to wait.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm excited. I'm excited for the opportunity. I think it's people get nervous about deer hunting, bar to entry's high and all that kind of stuff, man, you can go get a cheap 243 and a good 150 grain hunting bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to kick you in the shoulder. It's not going to freak you out. It's not going to be whatever. And you can wear sweatpants underneath your $10 Walmart camo and a warm sweater and sit in the woods.
Yeah.
And during the rut, your chances of something coming along and you have a shot at it is pretty high.
Yeah.
That's just fun. There's just something equalizing about all that I really appreciate.
No, dude, it's the best time of the year to be out there. And you know, we've said it a couple times. You can't kill a deer from your couch. Don't overthink it. Just you have to be outside in the woods, and now's the time to do it.
This date, when this one releases, hunting into Thanksgiving can be awesome. It can be rainy. It can be cold.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those really big bucks can be looking for second, third rounds of does. There's some big deer every year that die right around this time of year.
Yeah.
So go hunt.
Yep.
Go hunt the deer.
That's right. But man, this is fun. I hope you guys like this. Let us know if you did, and hope you guys are getting out there this fall and during the rut. And you know, I know we've been hitting deer hard over the last couple months. We've got some fun stuff coming up too as we get into December and January that we'll still, you know, play the deer game and talk to a few deer guests, but we're also going to do some different things, talking culture and history and some, you know, individuals that are interesting. Also just some more, you know, information about the Ozarks that's like, you kind of need to know this. If you're going to be an outdoorsman in the Ozarks, here's some things that you need to know about the place that you live and hunt and fish and stuff. So anyways, we're looking forward to that. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next one.